Hey everybody, this is Tony Holowitz from the John Anthony Group, and we are about to begin our training today. Our class this afternoon is in Microsoft PowerPoint. I want to thank everyone for being here. Normally in the training, I don't handle the training quite this way, but I want to illustrate a couple things just so you can see how PowerPoint works. What I've done is I've created a PowerPoint slideshow, and on my screen I'm running the slideshows so that you see it. I can manipulate or move through this slideshow in a number of ways. On my keyboard, I have some arrow keys. I have the up, the down, the left, and the right. The left arrow key takes me back one step. So I want you to observe as I keep hitting this here, here, it takes away certain items that I've put into the presentation. If I go one more, it takes me back to the previous screen. I'm going to go back one more, and we're at the first screen. So this is where I started. Now the thing that makes all software a little bit confusing is there's always more than one way to do the same thing. So for example, if I want to go to the next slide, and again I'm doing this a little bit backwards, I want to show you what I'm working with so that when I get into the actual PowerPoint it will make sense to you. Again, this is a slideshow in PowerPoint that I have running on my computer screen. Now, to go to the next slide, I can again use the arrow keys, but this time instead of the left arrow key, I'm going to use the right arrow key. Goes to my next slide. I can also use my mouse or my pointer to just simply click on the slide, and it will also forward it. Now, the ground rules that I just ran through had a number of different points. And one of the things I do is to keep my audience on the same page that I'm on, and page maybe isn't the best word, but to keep him on the same point or thought, what I do is I have these items come in one at a time. So instead of having all these items come in with the slide, I'm using the right arrow key or clicking on the screen to bring in each point one at a time. You'll see how to do this in the training. Once I get past my last point and hit the right arrow key, it went to the last slide in my show. So now what I have to do, because this is on my computer, I have to get away from this so that I can actually get into PowerPoint and show you how it works. What I want to do is I'm going to put the pointer somewhere on the presentation, and I'm going to click on the right mouse button. And when I did that, I have an option that says End Show, and I'm going to click on that. And now what you're going to see is over here on the left-hand side are the 4 slides that make up my presentation. It's just a very simple presentation. And on the right-hand side is where I can edit it. So what I'm going to do for right now is I'm just going to completely minimize this particular slide. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close it by clicking on the bottom X right up here on the top right-hand corner of my screen. And that closed the presentation. I'm now going to come up and minimize the entire presentation. I'm going to close this box that I have on my screen, and I want to talk about another item that's sort of important to be aware of when you're doing presentations. And normally I do this next step in advance, but I figure in this class I'll show you how to do it. When you're looking at a computer screen, you can set your monitor or your computer screen to what's called different resolutions. The resolution is how things appear on your monitor. What I want you to observe down below is these items are rather small. The icons are rather small, and I have a lot of blue space here. But I can change the way this is viewed. So I'm going to do that now so that the class can see everything bigger, so it's easier on your eyes, because everything's pretty small now. What I'm going to do is with my pointer on what is called the desktop of the monitor or the screen, I'm going to click on the right mouse button. When I do that, this box comes up, and if I go down and click on Properties right here, another box will pop up, and sometimes it takes a second or two for this to pop up. I have what is called Display Properties, and I have some options up here. I'm going to click on Settings. Now, one of the things in my office that I have is I actually have 2 monitors. They're side by side, but for the training class I shut off one of the monitors. So the monitor I'm looking at right now is monitor 2. And if I come down a little bit lower, I want to draw your attention here to the screen resolution. My screen is set at 1280 by 1024 pixels, meaning the width is 1280 pixels wide. If I click on this little item right here and drag it to the left, I can go and I can make things a little bit smaller. The two most common resolutions are 800 by 600, where everything on the screen is going to look huge, and 1024 by 768. You don't really have to remember what these are because you can mess around with them and just see how they work. But if you were to run a presentation on the screen, you'd want to know this on how to deal with the resolution. So what I try to incorporate in all these training classes is little things that you might not be aware of that can make an impact on the things you're doing. The resolution in this case can make an impact on your PowerPoint presentation if you're running it on a projector or something of that nature. So I'm going to come down to the right, I'm going to click on Apply, and in a minute you're going to see everything on my screen is much bigger, and OK. Now, what I want to do next is I'm going to come down on the bottom of the screen and I want to show you something. Right here, I already have Microsoft PowerPoint open. If I didn't have it open, I could click on Start. I could come up to All Programs, drag over, work my way over to Microsoft Office, find the PowerPoint icon, but I've already done that. So I'm going to just step away from that for a moment. And if you have a question on that, I'd be more than happy to answer it later. But I'm going to come down to the bottom of the screen and I'm going to click on PowerPoint because it's already open. So when you open up PowerPoint, what is going to occur is you're going to have a blank presentation pop up. In fact, I'm going to do that. I'm going to close PowerPoint and start fresh. I have PowerPoint, the icon for PowerPoint, in a couple different spots. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to open up Microsoft PowerPoint by coming up here, clicking on Microsoft Office PowerPoint 2003. Open it up. And again, what it does is it gives me a blank presentation. Now, one of the things that I want to talk about when it comes to PowerPoint is I always like to tell the story of the doctor. I did some training for a doctor many years ago, probably now about 5 years ago. And the doctor was preparing for a presentation she had to give to a small group of her peers. She did not know how to do PowerPoint. She was pretty uptight, nervous, because she had to not only worry about PowerPoint, but she also had to worry about doing the presentation itself, which had a lot of detail. One of the things I always tell people is one of the worst things you can do if you have to give a presentation is wait till the last minute to give it or start preparing it, because there's a couple different components to putting a presentation together. First, you have to think about what you want to present. You have to pull all the information together. PowerPoint is designed so that you're doing what are called slides, and over here on the left you see a slide. These slides by default are smaller, so they're not like a page or a printed page. You have to try to fit small pieces of information on the slide. It's hard to do the presentations thinking of it like a document, because what happens is you have to make bullet points so that you can make a point and then describe it, make a point and describe it. If you try to put paragraphs of information in your PowerPoint presentation, people aren't going to be able to read it. It's too small. And keep in mind, when you give a presentation, you can do it like I did. You could do it on a computer screen, or you could do it in a conference room, maybe with a projector, or you could print out the handouts or the presentation and give it to people. So you have a couple different ways that you can do presentations. So one of the first components of PowerPoint is to completely forget about PowerPoint and plan out your presentation. But keep in mind, you have to do it with the thought in mind of doing little small bullet points. So let's say we want to do a presentation. What I always tell people, when you do a presentation, it's sort of like producing a movie or putting together a little story. So what you want to do is you want to think about putting a story together. And what we're going to do to illustrate that point is today we're going to do a PowerPoint presentation that deals with my summer vacation. And that was a common back to school thing. You know, what did I do on my summer vacation? So what I've done is I've put a little bit of information together, some pictures, and the presentation is going to revolve around that. It's going to be a very simple presentation, but I think it will give you a good idea of how we can work with Microsoft PowerPoint. The other thing that I want to say about PowerPoint is PowerPoint, in my opinion, is not that difficult. PowerPoint is such that you can spend a lot of time on it, or you can spend a little bit of time on it. The more time you spend on it, the better you'll get at it. But you can take the same basic presentation and do it in 10 hours, or you could do it in an hour. It really depends on how many bells and whistles you want to put in it, and frankly, how much time you have. I'm a fan of keeping it simple. And you'll see that as we get into it a little bit. So here on my screen, we have Microsoft PowerPoint. We have a blank slide on the screen. And to illustrate the best way, in my opinion, to do Microsoft PowerPoint, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here on the right-hand side, and I'm going to use these little tools over here on the left. And what I'm going to do is drag or create a new presentation from one of their animated or one of their sort of incorporated slides. So I'm going to come down here and click on New Presentation. And what I'm going to do is choose the Auto Content Wizard. Because what the Auto Content Wizard does is it leads you through certain steps in a presentation, and you'll see that in a second. When I click on the Auto Content Wizard, which was over here on the right-hand side, this box pops up, and I'm going to simply click Next. In this Auto Content Wizard, it has certain types of presentations already in here. So in other words, it sort of outlines for certain specific types of presentations. For example, recommending a strategy, training, maybe a brainstorming session. These fall under the general category. If I click on corporate, here's some more that are more corporate presentations. Projects and sales and marketing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to all, and I'm going to just choose generic. And then I'm going to come down to the bottom and click on Next. So it's asking me next, how do I want to do these presentations? Do I want to do it on screen? Yeah, that's how I'm going to do it here in the class. I'm going to do an on-screen presentation. I can go back and change this information or change the way it's outputted, but I can do it on the web. I could do overheads, color overheads, or 35mm slides, just as an example. Now, I'm going to click Next, and the next thing I'm going to put in here is a title. I'm going to type in My Summer Vacation 2007. And when I get into this, I'm also going to be asked for some other information, that being a footer, meaning what do I want to put in here? Well, I'm going to type in Tony Holowitz 2007, just so we know whose presentation this is, who it's regarding, and that's it. I'm going to come down and click on Next. Now, I'm done. At this point, all I have to do is come down and click on Finish. And when I do that, what I want you to observe is on the left-hand side, they're automatically going to put some slides in here for me. I'm going to click Finish. Now, what Microsoft PowerPoint did is it created a number of slides over here, and it changed the view. We had the slide view, which is this tab, and it changed it to the outline view. I can go back and forth between these two items. On the left-hand side, if I want to edit or change any of the information on this slide, I can do it over here on the left-hand side, or I can actually click right on the slide, and I'll come back to this in a minute. If I slide this scroll bar up and down, you'll see that I have a number of slides over here on the left. There's 9 of them. Some of these slides have different points, and what it's trying to do is just give me a guideline or an outline for what I might want to put here. So again, this is just the generic presentation. So let me do this. Let me come over here and click on Slide 2 right here. And now what I'm going to do is show you 2 ways I can edit the same information on a slide. Over here on the left, I clicked on this writing right here. I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to type in something about my summer vacation. And I'm going to type in, I went to a baseball game. And if you look to the right, you'll see that it's actually going right into the slide. Okay, so I can type it there. I can also come over to the right, click, and when I click on the slide, there is an item called a text box. A text box is just a box that simply holds text. I can move this text box around. I'm not going to do anything with it yet, but I can also edit the slide over here on the right as well. I'm going to highlight all this information. I can delete it, but I don't really have to because when I've highlighted or selected it, I can type right over it. So I can type in the score of the game. And obviously, you know, we're taking some liberties here, but we can say Red Sox 100, I'm making it capital, Yankees 0. Okay? I can hit the Enter key, go down a line, and what it does for me, it's putting in another bullet point, and I can type in any information I want whatsoever. So I can go in and work on these slides and make sure that I put in all the information that I want to do. Okay, Wendy, no Oakland A's information. Sorry, we don't go there. David Ortiz, 4 home runs. So maybe I could put in some summaries here, you know. Whatever I want to do. Now, that's one slide. Here's the introduction. You'll see that I have the heading right up here. Again, I'm going to come over here to the right, and I'm going to type in Red Sox game. Okay. Right there. So, we have a slide right there that we just created. I can come down to the next slide, and I can change this one. You know, I'm not going to do that right now. But let's just go up and look at some of the things on the toolbar. And before I do that, I just want to pause and see if anyone has any questions whatsoever. Does anyone have any questions? Don't be bashful. Okay, fantastic. So, in my opinion, using this little tool to go in and create a presentation, just a simple presentation, tell a story like what you did on your summer vacation. You know, if you went on a vacation, do a presentation about that. I once had a woman who, you know, we were trying to figure out what to do, and she did a presentation about how to pick up your room for her teenage son. So when we're working on a PowerPoint presentation, again, one of the things I mentioned is don't start by opening PowerPoint. What you really have to do is you have to sit down and write an outline of summary or bullet points, what you want to have in that presentation. Now, I'm going to come back to slide 1, and I'm going to click over here, and I'm going to show you some of the tools we can use within PowerPoint. Down at the very bottom left, I have some very small items down here, little icons. The first one I'm going to go to is the last one. And this is going to be Start the Slideshow. And I'm going to click on this. And now we're seeing the slideshow, much like when you first started the class. I'm going to click on the screen, and that took me to my next slide. Okay. If I click again, it will go to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. If I hit Escape on my keyboard, it gets me out of the presentation. If I want to view these slides instead of an outline, just the actual slides, if I come up to the top here and click on the Slides tab, now we see the actual slides. If I come down to the bottom, there's something called the Slide Sorter View, and I'm going to click on this right here. And now we can see the slides more in a small sort of icon type look. You'll notice that the slides look a little fuzzy on the screen, and that's because up here on the toolbar, just like Microsoft Word and Excel, there is a zoom feature. If I click on this drop down and go up to 100%, for example, I can't see as many of them, but things become a little bit clearer. If I want to double click on any one of these slides, it will open up that slide on my screen. I'm going to go back down to the bottom left to the Slide Sorter View, and again we have this. Now I want you to observe that in this view, the third slide, and I know it's the third slide because they're all numbered down at the bottom here. If I want to take this slide and I realize, you know what, this slide, the topics of discussion, really needs to go before the Red Sox game, I can just click on it, drag to the left and drop it right in there. Drag and drop. Now it's numbered that number 2, and it's put the Red Sox game number 3. Let me double click on the Red Sox game, because now what I want to do is I want to look at this and I want to change the way it looks just slightly. First of all, this layout or this look or this design to me is very boring. It's just blue and black. It's just very nondescript. So if I want to make this a little bit more appealing, what I can do is I can come up here on the toolbar and click on Slide Design, and I'm going to click on that right now. When I do that, a box opens up on the right-hand side of the screen. PowerPoint comes packed with all kinds of different design templates. If I want to change the way this works or the way it looks, I can just come down here, and on any one of these slides, and I'm going to go pick one. I'm going to do an orange one just to give you an extreme right here. What it does is it changes the look and feel of all the slides. Now at this point I want to go back to my doctor story and tell you what happened with my doctor. She was very nervous about this presentation, and she wasn't very good with PowerPoint, and frankly she had her hands full with just getting all the information together. So what I urged her to do is I said, listen, do me a favor, let me come to the presentation with you so I can be there in case anything goes wrong. The stakes were very high for her, and I wanted to make sure that if she got nervous and something didn't quite go the way she expected, I could just get it done for her. I wanted to just be support. She decided not to. Well, to make a long story short, one of the things you have to think about when doing a PowerPoint presentation, again, really has nothing to do with PowerPoint. What you have to be aware of is that when you do a presentation, if you're doing it in a small room or an auditorium or wherever it might be, you've got to take into account the dynamic or the setting. So in other words, if you go into a setting that has a lot of bright light and you're using a projector to project this onto a screen, well, you might not be able to see this presentation. The colors might be too light. Or vice versa, if it's too dark, it might not work well as it could. What happened was she got into her presentation and the people could not see it. She had used some very, what I consider funky colors. They were very green, fluorescent colors, and the room was very light, so people could not see the text or some of the graphics she put in there. So the dilemma she had was people just couldn't see her presentation. That added stress, and I mean she had to keep on top of the information, plus now she was totally stressed out because of the presentation. All she would have had to do is apply a new template. So if she got into an environment where it didn't work, she could just apply a template that was maybe darker in design so things showed up better. And again, you can customize these templates if you do it all the time for your company. You could even go so far as have a template, a dark template and a light template, maybe even a medium template that you could apply based on the situation. So you have the ability with PowerPoint to do a lot of different things to the exact same presentation. Okay. Does anyone have any questions I can answer? Anything whatsoever? Okay, fantastic. Now, we are just working with one slide right now because I don't want to get too carried away, but what we might also want to do is take and put a picture in this slide. Now we have some graphics in here now, so this isn't maybe the best type of presentation. Let me come down here and just choose another one. I'm going to choose this one down here. But what I'm going to do is I want to insert a picture or a slide. So if you remember from my Microsoft Word class, one of the things, and actually it's the Word 2 class, one of the things that you need to be aware of is that Microsoft PowerPoint is very much like Microsoft Word. If I want to insert a picture onto this slide, all I have to do is this. I go up on the toolbar, I click on Insert, go down to Picture, over to the right, and go either Clip Art or From File. And let me just address this for a minute. Some of the things up on the toolbar that I'm really just sort of ignoring are things that I tend to go over in my Microsoft Word class. So one of the things I try to get people to do is I have a series of classes. The first class is Word, the second is Excel, the third is PowerPoint. The third is Outlook, and then PowerPoint. I misspoke. The third is PowerPoint and then Outlook. A lot of the things I'm doing right now are things that I've gone over in the Microsoft Word class, because once you learn some of the fundamentals of doing things in Word, they are the same in these programs. So to do a picture in Microsoft Word is the exact same as PowerPoint. Again, you go up to Insert, go down to Picture, and go over to the right, and you have two choices for the most part, Clip Art or From File. From File means that you have a picture somewhere on your computer or somewhere that you just want to bring in here. The hardest part of knowing how to get to that picture is knowing where it's stored. So what I did is I'm going to click on From File, and I want you to know that I created a folder on the desktop of my computer, and I'm going to come to the left, click on Desktop, and I created a folder called Summer Vacation Photos in preparation for this class. I'm going to double click on that, and here are some of the photos I have in here. Here's one for baseball, so I'm just going to choose that one and go Insert. Now what I've done is I've taken a picture of baseball, and I would suggest, you know what, think this is Red Sox. Take this picture, and now I want to show you how I can manipulate the picture. Again, I go over this a little bit more detail in Microsoft Word. If I take my pointer and put it on the picture, I get a four-headed arrow. If I click and hold and drag, I can move this anywhere around the screen that I so desire. So I'm going to take it and put it right down here for now. Actually, I'm going to move it up just a little bit because I want the Yankees score to go behind the picture. Now, I can make this picture bigger and smaller by going to the corners or the sides and clicking on those and dragging in or out. When I drag out, I can distort the image because as you make a picture bigger, it pulls the pixels of the picture apart and can distort it. But I'm just going to take this picture and I'm going to put it right on top of the text just to illustrate a point. If I double click on the picture, a box comes up and it gives me some options. For example, colors and lines. I could put some lines around it. If I want to put a line color around it, let's say red for Red Sox, I could click on red. How thick do I want it to be? You know, different kinds of things, weight, style. Again, these are things that I'd urge you to go in and mess around with and have fun with. Don't waste too much time on it. Size, what's the size of the picture? Position, I'm not going to get into this too much because I usually just drag it around. I click on picture and I have some other options as well. I can make the brightness or contrast change. I'm going to click OK. I've just put a red box around it. If I right click on the picture, I can take this picture and I can do some different things with it. For example, I can change the way it looks, either the order or something called grouping. I'm going to focus on order. And I'm going to go send to back. So in essence what I'm doing here is I'm sending it behind the text. So now the text is on top of the picture. So what I'm doing now is I've got the text on the picture, but now the text doesn't really show up. I did that on purpose just to illustrate a point. Sometimes you don't always want to do these things because things don't really show up the way you want them to. I'm going to take the photo, I'm just going to drag it down a little bit and leave it like that. I'm going to come in and take For Home Run, highlight it, and just like in Microsoft Word, I'm going to come up and change the font color to white. So now that shows up because I changed the white against the blue background. So now let me go back to my first slide over here on the left. I'm going to go down to the bottom. I'm going to click on the Slideshow. And here's my summer vacation. You see the whole thing looks different. It puts in the date, my name, 2007, and the page or the slide number. I'm going to click once. Takes me to the second slide. I'm going to click again. And here we go with the Red Sox game. Now, what I want you to observe is I've got 3 points here. I went to a baseball game, the Red Sox 100, Yankees 0, David Ortiz 4 home runs. And these all came in at one time. So the next thing I can do is I can change the way the text comes into my slide, because if I'm giving a presentation, I want to control this somewhat. So I'm going to hit escape on my keyboard to get out of this. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up and I'm going to highlight all the text, and I'm going to go up and I'm going to change the what's called animation schemes, or the way things come in. And again, I see this over on the right hand side of my screen. I'm going to click on this, and what you're going to see is I'm going to get some options. Now, for one thing, I'm going to come over here to the right and I'm going to click on Fade in All. And on the left, I'm going to see a brief outline of what happens. Fade in one by one. Okay, see how these things are coming in slower? Now what I can also do is I can come in and I can decide how I want to do it. I can do things based on if I click on it. So let me go to the presentation again, and you'll see how this will look different. Here's the Red Sox game. Okay, that came in once. I'm going to click on the point on the screen someplace, and now my next point comes in. That's what I did in my presentation. Click again, the next point, the next point. So I urge people, think about timing. When you give a presentation, you have to consider timing and how you want people to see things. I think the worst thing is when people, and I see this all the time, whether it be a presentation using PowerPoint or just a class, when people hand out handouts or information during the class, what does everyone do? They read it, and they don't listen to the instructor. By dealing with the way information comes in, you can then control what people are seeing and when. Does anyone have any questions that I can answer about anything related to what I've done at this point? Anything whatsoever? Anyone? Okay, fantastic. I'm going to hit escape again and get out of this. Now, here we have our presentation. We're starting to get there. Again, I'm going to go to the next slide and I'm going to do another item. This one, the topic is went to the beach. So I'm just going to do this real quick and talk my way through it. I'm going to make capitals. I went to the beach. And at this point, I want to suggest to you a couple things about doing a presentation. When you do a presentation, I can sit here and really get caught up in everything I put in here. In other words, do I have the perfect picture? Is it aligned properly? Is everything perfect? And what you can do when you're doing these presentations is really waste a lot of time. I always live by something called the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 rule when doing these kinds of things. Think back on my last slide, the one with the baseball player and the 3 points I made. If I asked 3 people if they liked that slide, what I think you'll find is one person would love it, one person would hate it, and one person is indifferent. So one of the things you can really get caught up in is, for example, over here on the right-hand side, we have all kinds of animation scheme options, tons of them. I could sit here and show you how they impact the slideshow one by one. I urge you go in and mess around with these. For example, I could do random bars. See how that one looks a little different? I could go rise up. They're coming up from the bottom. I could go spin. See how we can get very carried away with this? Okay. So now I'm going to come in and edit this and go, I caught a fish, or, anything. Or how about I got sunburned? So you can put anything in here you want, but all of this stuff should be done well in advance of ever sitting down and working with this. And I'm going to hit the space bar, and you're going to see, just like Microsoft Word, I get a red squiggly line suggesting that this is a mistake. I'm going to right click on it. It's suggesting I'm trying to spell sunburn, and I'm going to click that, and it fixes it for me. Okay? And I'm just going to type in very simply, it was great. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to insert a picture of the beach. So I'm going to again go up to Insert, go down to Picture, from File, because I know where it is. And again, if you want to do it from File, you just have to know where to find the picture, and sometimes that's one of the most difficult things you'll do. I was prepared. And now I have this picture right there that I can put in for the beach. I'm going to drag it over to the right. I'm going to make it bigger. Okay. And I'm just going to move it over to the right a little bit. Okay. Now, let me go back to my presentation, coming down to the bottom. And again, you can see how this progresses. And each time I click, something new comes in. There's my picture. I went to the beach. Click again. My first point comes in. Second point. Third point. Okay, just so you know, that is not me in that mask. I guarantee it. Okay, fantastic. What I'm going to do next is, again, I'm going to hit escape on my toolbar. And by hitting escape, I'm going to get out of the presentation. Now, I just hit escape and nothing happened. Sometimes what you have to do is you have to click on the presentation just to sort of say, hey, I'm here. Now I'm going to hit escape again, and it sort of knew that I was there. So the next thing I want to do is down here on the right, on the left, I'm going to click on this slide that I've actually got on the screen, and I'm going to right-click on it. Now, when I right-click on a slide, I'm a right-clicker. I like to right-click because there's a lot of options here. What I can do is I have a lot of options here. One of the things I can do is copy this slide. So if you're trying to do a slide that is very, very similar to another slide, well, don't retype it. Don't work that hard. Just right-click on the slide you've chosen, go copy, and now I'm going to come down here, and I'm just going to click right in between slide 6 and 7, and I'm going to do paste, which I use the keyboard shortcut a lot. Control V. Control C is copy, Control V is paste. I'm going to go Control V. And I'm going to hit V again and again and again and again, and you'll see that I'm taking this slide and I'm pasting it multiple times. So maybe if I wanted a second slide that reflected this, well, what I could do is come in and change the points. You know, I caught a fish, or, you know, whatever you want to put in here. You could even go in and change that photograph to something else. Okay. So you can go in and completely modify this. Now, I might want to take this slide here, and I showed you in the slide sorter view down here how you could click on a slide and move it around. You can do the same thing right here. You can also go to the outline view and do it. All the things that I taught you in Microsoft Word about changing text, making it bold, italic, underline, putting bullet points in, changing the font color, you can do that as well. What's really unique about PowerPoint is the design features. By being able to come in, change the color schemes, changing the way things look. For example, I can click on this and I change the general color scheme. Okay. If I want to undo that, I can undo it by going up on the toolbar and clicking undo. So what I recommend is, if you use PowerPoint a lot, one of the things you should consider doing is creating for your company a PowerPoint template. And let me talk about this just briefly by showing you how to save this presentation. When you do a presentation, Microsoft PowerPoint opens it up without a name. In fact, because this is the second presentation I had opened, I want you to observe up on the toolbar it says Microsoft PowerPoint Presentation 2. If I come up here and click on File and go Save, I'm going to be prompted to save it as what's called a presentation. If I click on this drop down here, I have a lot of different options. I can also save it as a web page so that I could insert it into a website. So for example, if you want to put a PowerPoint presentation in your website, you can do that. I could save it as a single file, or I could save it as a template of some type. What I'm going to do at this point is I'm just going to save it as a presentation. So in this particular case, it's just sort of got a white background. I'm going to call it My Summer Vacation 2007 and click Save. So now if I look up at the title bar up top, there it is, My Summer Vacation 2007. I can also, if I'd like, I can add slides to this. I can delete slides by clicking on them and hitting delete on my keyboard. Okay, so I just deleted it. And again, with the slide sorter view, a lot of times you'll get into this presentation after the fact and realize, although you have all the slides there, they're out of order. You really would prefer to do this slide here and maybe this slide there. So you can move them around, and a lot of times what you'll find is after you do the presentation once or twice, you'll find that it will flow better once you get into it in a little more practice. Now, another option is when I come back down to the left and click on the normal view right here, I want you to observe down below there's an area down here called Click to Add Notes. And what I just did is I took my pointer and I put it on this little blue bar and I dragged this up and down. I dragged it up to make it bigger. So let's say you're doing a presentation, and what you want to do is when you get to this, there's some extremely complex information related to these 3 bullet points. Well, what you can do is you can put notes here. So, you can put it as, whatever you want. Talk about MC squared, whatever it might be. You can just put a note in here. Oop. Something like that. Just make a note to yourself. Now, when you're giving a presentation, what will occur is you can actually take this whole presentation and print it out. I'm going to go up and click on File. I'm going to go down to Print. And when I go to Print, I have some options, many options. I can tell which printer to go to. I can say if I want to do just specific slides, this case is going to do all of them. But I can choose, do I want it grayscale, black and white, color? But this is what I find most interesting. With where it says print what, if I printed slides, it would print out all these slides, each slide on a piece of paper. If I click on the drop down, I can do handouts, if I want to do handouts. I can do the notes pages or an outline view. An outline view is what I use frequently because I know the material well enough so that I don't need to see all of it. I just need to sort of keep track of the order in which they're going. The notes page, which I started to talk about, is something that will print the slide with the notes. So you're in an auditorium, you're in a room, you can be running the slideshow, and a lot of times it makes sense to have someone else do it for you. I'm going to click on Preview and you'll see what this looks like. Now, I didn't put any notes here. I'm going to go to the next page. Let's see. Let me go here to the next page. No notes there, I think. Oh, yes, it is. See right down here where it says talk about MC squared? Those are my notes right there. So those are my notes which I can print out and have in a presentation or give it to someone else. I have seen situations where the presenter walks away from the projector and they have to have someone else run the projector for them because they just simply can't be doing both things at the same time because they're conversing with people and asking questions. And it's very hard to do that. So a lot of times having those notes in your hand, you can keep track of what you're trying to talk about. Does anyone have any questions about any of the things I've talked about to this point in time? Anything? I'm going to go up and click on Close while you're thinking about that. And now I've just broken this down to, again, just seeing the notes view. So to back up for a minute, I can change the design templates. I can change the animation scheme or the color schemes by clicking on certain information over here on the right hand side, and I got to that by clicking on Design. Okay. Any questions? Any questions whatsoever? Any questions about the toolbar or any information about going in and doing a slideshow? Okay. Let me just start at the beginning again, just for a moment. What I recommend you do is, again, come up with something fun that you want to do with Microsoft PowerPoint. I don't care what it is. Come up with something that you just have to tell a little bit of a story. Let's say you're trying to convey your favorite recipe to someone in your office or, anywhere. Think about how to present that recipe. Well, first you go to the store, you buy 3 pounds of chicken breast, you buy chives, you buy, fresh, pine nuts, anything. Write down on a piece of paper what you want that to be. Keep in mind if you try to put too much information in here and it runs on, the text will be so small people won't be able to read it. You can always take this information and give them handouts during, or actually I recommend after the class, to reference any material. The other thing you can do with a presentation is let's say, for example, that you want to reference something. Sometimes you might want to reference a report. Maybe that report is some statistical information. Well, maybe it's statistical information at some particular website. Well, let's say that right here we want to relate to something that is related to David Ortiz. Maybe he has a page on his website that is related to him. Well, I can highlight his name. I go up, click on the hyperlink option up here, and when I do that, I can link that name to something or anything. Let's say he has a website, davidortiz.com. I don't know if that exists, but just to use this as an example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in Yahoo. And there it goes. I've been there. I'm going to click OK. And now what I want you to observe is that David Ortiz's name is now a hyperlink. So let's go back to the presentation. I'm going to go back down to the bottom left. I'm going to click on this Slideshow option. Red Sox game. I'm going to click once. I'm going to click again and one more time. And we're going to see David Ortiz is blue. Now, a lot of times what I see people do is if they're trying to put information in a slide, if you're in, say, an auditorium and your computer has internet access, well, instead of trying to get all that information that might be very tiny or on a slide, just create a link to it. Coming down here, clicking on David Ortiz, and what's going to happen is when I click on this, it's going to open up Internet Explorer and take me right to yahoo.com because that's what I told it to do. So in other words, instead of doing something so that you're trying to figure out how do I get all this information in there, what you do is just create a link to it. You can also create a link to another file. So let's say you have all kinds of statistical information in a Microsoft Excel file. Again, I'm going to come to another slide just to illustrate a point. I'm going to hit Escape. I'm going to go to another slide, and I'm just going to take this information here. I'm going to go up and click on the hyperlink, and let's say all the information is in an Excel document. Well, what you have to make sure you have is that you have that Excel file somewhere on your computer. So I'm going here, and here is just an Excel file. If I click on OK, now I have created a link to that Excel file. So at this point, and I'm not sure what's in that file, so I'm not going to open it, but at this point, if I go to the slideshow, if I click on this link, what it will do is actually open up the Microsoft Excel file. Okay. So let me do that. Let me just pause this for a second. I'm going to go in. I'm going to click on this link real quick. And I just want to see what happens and what comes of it. But we're going to see that Excel opens up and there's all kinds of information right here. Okay. So now, because I'm presenting this with a projector, this is what people are seeing, and that's it. Okay. So, at this point, I have hit a lot of the information I wanted to hit. What I'd like to do at this point is just open it up for questions to see if anyone has any questions about anything that I've done in Microsoft PowerPoint. Please, does anyone have any questions whatsoever? Anyone? Do you think you could go in and do a PowerPoint presentation at this point? I bet you could. I urge you just to try opening up PowerPoint. Use the Auto Content Wizard and go in and mess around with the presentation. You'd be amazed at how easy it can be to do. Okay. I have a comment here from someone that says it's a good idea to go encourage people to go in and mess around with the different functions. Yeah, I think it is. You know, again, one of the things that I always try to tell people when it comes to a PowerPoint presentation is, you know, where you can really get caught up in wasting a lot of time is, for example, the way the words come into the screen. You know, Microsoft PowerPoint has all these options for the way it comes in. Does it come in from the left? Does it come in from the right? The top, the bottom, does it come in as a different color? All kinds of options. When I suggested to you that you can waste a lot of time in PowerPoint, well, that's what I was referring to. I mean, if you go through and try all those different options, to find just the perfect one. Again, I go back to my point about the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 rule. You might get the one that you think is fantastic, perfect, but in all my experience, if you ask 3 people, one person's going to love the way it comes in, another's going to hate it, and a third is indifferent. So regardless of what you do, everyone is going to have a certain opinion about it. So don't get too caught up in the bells and whistles. If you have a good template and you develop a good template, it makes doing presentations in the future just that much quicker. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'd be more than happy to stay on the line and answer any questions you might have. But at this point, what I'd like to do is I'd like to end the training unless anyone has any specific questions whatsoever. Again, does anyone have any questions that I can answer? And if not, thank you very much for your time. But again, I'll stay on the line to answer any questions you have. Thank you very much.